We are two wild and crazy guys. Well, isn't that special? And I live in a van down by the river. These are just a few examples of quotes from the greatest sketch comedy show that has ever existed in television history, Saturday Night Live.
I would like
to
feed your fingertips
feed your fingertips
to the Wolverines.
to the Wolverines.
Next. Live from New York, it's Saturday night!
Greetings, I'm Hot Toddy, and welcome to another special TV edition of Get Real. If you've not figured out what show we are talking about, well, I feel sorry for you because it's pretty much blatant at this point. If you haven't gotten it by my sweatshirt, what I said at the beginning, what you've just seen, everything that's going on here, I can't help you because it's pretty blatant which show we're talking about. And as you can see, the camera is kind of at an awkward angle, and the reason why is because I wanted to put in the background here my extremely huge Saturday Night Live Funko collection, as well as action figures of Tina Fey and Amy Poehler and the Blues Brothers. These are very special things. These are just some of the action figures of Saturday Night Live that I have. It's actually kind of incredible and maybe kind of sad just how many collectibles I have from Saturday Night Live. This sweatshirt is a collector's item. It has here, it says 50 years in the middle, Saturday Night Live 1975 to 2025. So everything that I own when it comes to Saturday Night Live has a special meaning to it because it was all stuff that, you know, was only going to be out for a matter of time. So you had to get your hands on it as soon as you can because poof, it'll be gone. That's what I do with my money.
Bitch, are you for real?
But anyway, in honor of Saturday Night Live, of course, for those of you who don't know, Saturday Night Live is about to celebrate its 50th anniversary, 50 years on the air. I've been around for 35 of the 50 years that it's been on the air, and I've been a lifelong fan of Saturday Night Live. It's actually kind of incredible. One of my earliest memories was from Saturday Night Live. I remember very vividly watching Dennis Miller on Weekend Update do a I help I've fallen and I can't get up joke. Some of my earliest memories of life dealt with television shows of that time period when I was super little. Like I remember watching Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show. I remember watching David Letterman when he hosted Late Night after The Tonight Show at 12:30. I remember sitcoms that my parents would watch, like The Golden Girls, Wings, Night Court. I remember all these shows. And they are some of my earliest memories. Now, I don't know if you would consider that a good thing or a bad thing that some of my earliest memories are of TV, but I mean, that's kind of that's kind of what got me into media, working in radio and doing videos and stuff, is because I was just always fascinated by the media, by TV and radio. But getting back to my original point, SNL is one of my earliest memories, and it really is just an incredible show when you think about it. This is part 3 of what ended up being a 3-part tribute to Saturday Night Live. The last thing we did was the Stump Hot Toddy Saturday Night Live Trivia Round 2, and then before that we did the Get Real on Saturday Night in the So What Did We Miss in 2024 episode. And that particular movie, even though it takes a lot of liberties, it does tell the story of the chaotic mess that was Saturday Night Live in the beginning. The history of SNL, I mentioned Johnny Carson. SNL would not exist if it wasn't for Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson was the host of The Tonight Show from 1962 to 1992. And during the time period that they were getting ready to make SNL, on Saturday nights at 11:30, they would play reruns of this night show. And Johnny felt he was just being oversaturated, like he was just being overexposed. Like, people are not going to want to tune in for new episodes because they're getting tired of seeing me 6 nights a week, even if it's not a new episode. So he convinced NBC to put something on at 11:30 on Saturday nights. And NBC decided, why don't we try a sketch comedy show? Because sketch comedy variety shows were all the rage back then. You had the Carol Burnett Show, you had Laugh-In, you had all those shows that, you know, were like primetime spectacles. This would be the first attempt to do it at late night and do it a little differently. Do some different, you know, little minor tweaks here and there to make it different than all the other shows that were on, sketch comedy variety shows, that is, on at that time. So they, you know, they put together SNL, and at that point it was called Saturday Night, because weirdly enough at that time, speaking of primetime sketch comedy shows, Howard Cosell, sportscaster Howard Cosell, had a primetime Saturday night sketch comedy show called Saturday Night Live. So they legally could not call it Saturday Night Live, they had to call it Saturday Night. They found Lorne Michaels. They put him in charge, they put him at the helm, and you know, they got it going. They found the cast members that they wanted. He knew some cast members, and then they went out and searched for them. Of course, that ended up being the legendary original cast that included Gilda Radner, Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi. I mean, it was incredible. It was an incredible cast, and they were off and running. On October 11th, 1975, the first episode of Saturday Night Live was born with the host George Carlin and musical guest Billy Preston. And it's just kind of incredible. They have not stopped ever since. Since October 11, 1975, it has been consistently on the air. And they've had, of course, many different iterations of cast members coming through, but it is a historic show. And it's rare that you can say that a show has been on for 1 decade, let alone 50 decades. And the show was super groundbreaking. Like, as I was talking about earlier, there were a ton of sketch comedy shows on at that time, but they were all very, I don't want to say cookie cutter, but they were all very like family friendly. Like, oh, it's something the whole family could watch at prime time. The Carol Burnett Show, huge show. I mean, it was absolutely legendary. Laugh-In was a very popular show. All of those shows produced celebrities, you know, that's a key thing that we'll get to here in a bit. But like, all of those shows had big stars come out of them, and they were big stars while they were on. But SNL, they wanted to do it differently. Like, this is late night. You know, we have a chance. It's late night on Saturday night. We have a chance to get a little edgier here. So what do? So they kind of took away the family comedy element of the show and decided to do something daring. Like, you know, do sketches where, you know, blood would splatter everywhere. Make crude jokes. Make crude characters.
Fred Garvin, male prostitute.
And then to top it all off, the craziest thing, this was the thing that blew everybody away. They said, well, who are you going to get to host Saturday night? Who's going to host this show? Everybody. That's who's going to host this show. And that's basically what it was. Lorne Michaels' idea was, let's not have just one host. Let's have a variety of hosts. Let's find the biggest actors and actresses of that time, and let's bring them in and have them host an episode. And we would just have new hosts every week. That had never been done before. That was unheard of. Any variety show had to have that host or those hosts. You know, Laugh-In was Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. The Carol Burnett Show was Carol Burnett's sketch comedy show. All of these shows had their one host. Even the Tonight Show, all of these shows had the one host. But on SNL, they were going to do something a little daring. One of the ways to keep you tuning in every week was who was going to host this week. And that was the appeal. That was one of the major appeals of the show itself. So it was extremely groundbreaking in like taking that risk. It's one of those risk-taking shows where it's like, we're gonna do it different. We're gonna do what everybody else does, but we're gonna do it differently. We're gonna take it up a notch. We're gonna be a little edgier. We're gonna be a little more sarcastic. We may even show a nipple. Now, they never showed a nipple because they can't do that on network TV. But you see where I'm getting at here, you know.
Why I like to be nude.
When the show started, it was super rocky. Reviews were mixed at best. But Lorne Michaels historically said, after they read the reviews after that first show, he said, looks like we're a hit. Looks like we're going to make it. You know, because the show, if there is no such thing as bad press. If you're trying to create something that you believe will change the world in some form or fashion, any press is good press. And so that's basically how they looked at it. And when they got into it, you know, it was incredible. People started to tune in more and people started talking about it more. All of a sudden, these people that nobody knew a few months ago were superstars. Chevy Chase was the first major superstar of Saturday Night Live. And a lot of people said that they should change up the show so that he would be the host every week, that he should be the main focus. But Lorne Michaels stuck to his guns. He's like, no, the cast itself are the stars. They are the stars. The cast itself, the cast themselves. It's art is... But that was the main focus, was the group, the company, the troupe. Those are the stars of the show, and not just this one singular person. So, I mean, it was incredible that this, from the ashes rises the phoenix type of show, it kind of just came out of nowhere, and then people just immediately gravitated to it. And the show, over the course of 50 years, has brought so many iconic characters. There's no way that I can go into how many iconic characters there are, but I mean, there's tons. There's the Coneheads.
The name is Conehead. Conehead. We come from France.
The Blues Brothers.
I'm sold now. I'm sold now.
Gumby.
This is the Gumby story, damn it, and Gumby does not say damn it.
Church Lady.
Well, isn't that special?
Stefan.
Well, they have a Jewish Dracula.
Oh, what's his name?
Sidney Applebaum.
And the list goes on and on and on. There were so many iconic characters, still to this day, that have graced that screen. The latest character that has been getting a lot of screen time is Ego Wodom's character, where she says, "Cook my meat."
And Antonio Banderas over here trying to get some butt while he got Cujo living in his basement.
It's great, you know. It's so refreshing when you see that one character that kind of creates like its own atmosphere, kind of creates its own show out of the show. Wayne's World was a lot like that. That's why they got a movie, you know. It kind of carves out a section of SNL for itself and creates its own thing. And it's really awesome when that happens. Now let's talk about some of my favorite characters on the show. There's so many that I love. I've named off a few. Church Lady is one of them. Stefan, the Roxbury guys, Matt Foley, who lives
In a van down by the river.
and maybe one of the most underrated characters on the show. He might be my all-time favorite character. Very underrated. Was the character that Bill Hader did during his time. He's a grizzled old reporter named Herb Welsh.
Herb, be professional.
Jack, why don't you sit on your jacket and I'll do the news?
No. Herb. No, come on. Herb. Herb.
Every few months, I go back and watch the Herb Welsh sketches. In fact, we have a character on the Smokin' Hot Toddcast that is based off the Herb Welsh character, my version of the Phantom of the Opera. If you've ever listened to the show and you hear the Phantom of the Opera comes up, he sounds very grizzled and just over everything. That it basically is Herb Welsh and the Phantom put together. My thing is that the Phantom of the Opera, because he's based on the 1925 Lon Chaney Phantom of the Opera, which is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. So my thought process is he's so old and grizzled, he's just over everything. And so if you ever hear the Phantom of the Opera, know that he's based off of Bill Hader's Herb Welsh character from SNL.
Have you spoken to Myrtle Beach police to understand exactly what's been going on?
Don't direct me, you tie-rack.
What does that even mean? I don't wear a tie.
You stink on ice.
There are so many iconic moments. I think probably the funniest moments from the show is when they break up, when they start to laugh and start to lose it during a sketch. Another thing that makes SNL so much different than sketch comedy shows of the past is that Lorne Michaels is very strict that you are not to break character during a sketch. Obviously, it's a possibility, and he knows that. But he basically says, you know, don't ad-lib, don't make it about you. This is about the show. This is about, again, it's about the group. It's about the troupe. So, you know, don't just go off and then try to make people laugh. So there are times when it just happens, because it's going to happen. And so the funniest moments on the show are the moments when they have no control over what they're doing.
Sir,
I think you're hurt.
If your mom likes chicken, you might like chicken.
It's official. I can't have children.
The impact of this show, I mean, there's no comparison. There's been tons of sketch comedy variety shows throughout history, and like I said, so many of them have produced huge stars, but none, I don't think, has produced even close enough amount as Saturday Night Live. There have been so many huge stars come out of that show over the course of 50 years. It's mind-boggling. I mean, that show started the careers of major players in Hollywood. And it's not just in the cast either. You think about the Saturday Night Live band. The original director, Howard Shore, went on to become an Academy Award-winning composer. You think about Al Franken, who was a writer during the original era, and he came back when Lorne Michaels came back to be the executive producer in '85 and stayed until '95. From 2009 to 2017, he was a United States Senator. A United States Senator. Now, even though he didn't have a crucial part of SNL's history, he was chosen to be a cast member because Lorne did really like him. But SNL also produced an Academy Award winner, Robert Downey Jr. And just endless amounts of comedians, writers. Think about the writers. Conan O'Brien, Bob Odenkirk, Better Call Saul himself. The list goes on and on. So many people that have worked on that show went on to become icons and household names. So the impact that this show has, I don't think will ever be matched by any other sketch comedy show. Sketch comedy shows come and go. Mad TV is a great example. That was the only real sketch comedy show that could compete with SNL because they were on for 15 years or so, and even they grew some very famous faces, including Academy Award winning director Jordan Peele. Props to Mad TV. Mad TV does have its time in the sun because it also produced a lot of huge celebrities from that show. But SNL still remains as the standard. It's the show that jumpstarts the careers of so many already amazing, I think, comedians, whether they be stand-up or acting. I mean, it's the show you still want to be on, even 50 years later. And there's been so many people that will say, the show was good during this era. Oh, it hasn't been good since this era. Oh, it hasn't been good since this era. It hasn't been good. They do that all the time. But the fact is, if the show sucked, it would not be on the air anymore. There were times when it almost did get canceled. There's been many times. But since, I think its 20th anniversary, that was the last time it was in real danger, it's been grandfathered in, and it's not just because, it's the show that's on at 11:30 on Saturday nights. It's because it still draws the viewers, and it's because people still want to be on it after all these years. And that's the thing, is it provides so much entertainment for people. I still tune in every Saturday night, and I've done so since I was a little kid. I mean, the impact that it's had on me, I'm no celebrity or anything like that, obviously. I mean, I just run a little YouTube channel and I do a little podcast, but it inspired me to do a lot of things. And the Smokin' Hot Toddcast actually is a direct inspiration from Saturday Night Live. I loved sketch comedy so much. I said, what if a podcast was sketch comedy? What if it was based around that? Still doing the usual podcast stuff sometimes, but then also incorporating comedy with it. And that's where the Smokin' Hot Toddcast came from. I actually describe it as if Saturday Night Live was a podcast, it would be the Smokin' Hot Toddcast. Hell, we even have our own news segment, just like SNL does. SNL's Weekend Update, we have the Ollie Report. So, I wanted to make it just like that, and it's all because of SNL. If SNL hadn't existed, I don't think the Smokin' Hot Toddcast would. So, the impact that this show has is just incredible, and what it's done for so many people for so many years. It's not many shows can say that they did that. The only other show that could compete with that is The Tonight Show, which is also on NBC, also at 11:30, but during the week. It's been on since 1954. So, it's really an awesome thing when shows like this have not only staying power, but power to change lives, jumpstart careers and just prove to stand the test of time. Yes, comedy changes. That's the thing that everybody, I don't think a lot of people understand. Like, oh, it's not funny now because they're too afraid to be edgy like they were back in the day. Well, that's not the case. Comedy has just changed over the course of years. A few years ago, you could be edgier. You could say that thing that you're not supposed to say now. You know what I mean? It's like you could do things differently back then, but things have changed, and SNL adapts to that. And so, you know, the old saying, join or die. I mean, that's kind of what it is. Either you're on board with it or you're not. And if you're not, you're probably not going to watch SNL. But if you are on board with it, you're going to watch it and you're going to enjoy it for what it's become. Because SNL changes with the generations. And that's why we've had so many generations of amazing cast members over the years. So my hat's off to Saturday Night Live. Happy 50th anniversary. Keep on keeping on. And here's to 50 more years. Lorne Michaels will be dead.
Well, isn't that special?